It's going to be a little bit shaky in my camera because from time to time I'll have to move the camera.
No
I'm
problem.
trying to get a better sound. I like your microphone. I have a good microphone, a blue one, no less, the same kind of as yours. But I
Blue
need to
one.
be able to. The blue mic, you ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah, yeah. The Blue Yeti, the one behind you.
Yeah, yeah. That's good. But apparently you have to get a microphone, a headset that goes along with it. So, well, you might be able to hear me very well. I wouldn't be able to hear you
Ah,
once it's plugged in. So I just have to rely on the general speakers of this computer. So
yeah. I
hopefully it'll.
use this guy. The any 3.5 millimeter headset will work with it
Yeah, is that right? Okay. Well, maybe I should do that.
because there on the Blue Yeti there's a hole in the back right here, and you can just plug it
Right.
directly in.
Yeah, I could do that. All right, I'll figure this out. But the sound quality seems is going to be okay, I think, for the time being. All right, let's see. All right, folks, welcome to the Barak Lurie podcast. And today we have a very special guest. His name is TJump. I really like this guy. He's an atheist. He has his own show. Tom, what do we call it? Tom Jump Show, or what do we do?
TJump, just TJump YouTube channel.
Okay, the TJump YouTube channel. It's a very good channel. What I like about Tom is that he has a lot of guests on. He's not afraid to talk to those people who are religious. He doesn't mind the debate. He knows his stuff. I was a guest on his show, the TJump YouTube channel, and I thought he was very well prepared, very thoughtful. And I thought, you know what? Let's return the favor. So he's a good guy. What I also like about Tom is that he doesn't cheat in his debate. What I noticed is that he will listen and also address the issue, as opposed to, unfortunately, some atheists, and I'm sure some religious people too, who will just use ad hominem attacks. What I also like about Tom, and this is something that we talked about when we had our, video with you last time, Tom, was that he always wants to first establish that whether or not there's a creator, right? And then discuss whether or not that creator is the creator of the Bible, the God of the Bible, because too often it's conflated and it's too easy to kind of sidestep the issues of the day. So is there a creator? That's the first issue. And then we can discuss whether that creator is the same as the God of the Old Testament and what the Christians call the New Testament, and for that matter, the Book of Mormon, right? So welcome, Tom, to the show, and thank you so much. What I've said is that I'm going to do this more like an interview style as opposed to a debate, because, look, I was an atheist before, as you know, a very deep atheist, and I'm always interested in seeing whether I have missed something. I always like to know also whether or not there has been some arguments that, I just may have missed in the old days when I was an atheist. So I like to hear it. I'm constantly debating this issue, constantly looking to the issue. So let me start off with this, Tom. Where did you start with your atheism? Were you raised religiously, or did you always start as an atheist? Tell me a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I was brought up in a Christian household. I went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school. I was religious up until my 17, 18-ish range. My transition really didn't have anything to do with looking into atheism. I had major depression my entire life and was praying to a God who I believed was all loving and cared about me more than anything in the world. I prayed every day, morning and night, for help with my depression. Nothing changed. So I just lost the ability to believe that there was such an all-loving being out there. And so that was what caused me to lose my faith. And then years later, I started to research into the philosophy as a different way to try and overcome my depression. And I started to learn about atheism and the different philosophical positions, and saw some of the debates with the four horsemen of the apocalypse,
Right.
Hitchens, Harris, Dawkins, and Dennett. And I
Right.
really liked their work. I identified, and their arguments made a lot of sense to me. And so that's when I adopted the atheist label. And I've been researching and debating with theists ever since.
Right. Are your parents still around? Are they, and if so, are they? Is there any sort of tension between you and them, or how would you describe it?
No, my parents were more concerned with the depression more than anything, because that was a bigger concern than anything. And
Sure.
so they didn't really talk with me much about leaving Christianity. It wasn't really a big issue. So they're in Pennsylvania, so several thousand miles away, 1,000 miles away or something. But we don't
Right.
really talk about it much.
All right. Well, that's great. You still have a good relationship with them. There's a lot of people that sometimes when one abandons religion or finds religion for that matter, it can be a source of tension. So I'm glad that that's not the case. Well, let's get right into it, Tom. One of the things that I'm always curious about, and it's in the first starting point, is the issue about morality. So we touched a little bit about this when you and I were on your show, and we all agree that morality is a good thing. We want a world that we consider to be moral. The question is, what is moral, and where does morality come from altogether? How would you take that?
Right. So I think that morality is objective, but I don't think you need a God for it.
The
So most
question is,
philosophers agree that there is an objective morality, but we don't think that you actually need a God to ground the objective morality. There are many other alternatives that are presented in the field of philosophy. The one I prefer is a law of nature, something as a feature of nature that it results in the combinations of the laws of physics to produce morality in the minds of conscious agents. I think that's a more plausible explanation than a God. And so I think that we can ground our objective morality from those kinds of emergent relations in the universe. And I don't think we actually need to say there is a God anywhere involved in that.
okay. Now, some people would say that when it comes to morality, the idea is that we don't want people to kill each other. We don't want people to steal, to embezzle, to lie, these sorts of things. But yet, there's a sense that, and perhaps we've all felt this when, let's say, you lie to somebody and you feel this incredible sense of guilt that kind of descends upon you. It's a little different than, let's say, you go jaywalking, right? Which is illegal, but if you jaywalked, you wouldn't feel like you're a terrible person. Or if you went too fast on the freeway, you wouldn't feel like you're a bad person. You just did something wrong, according to the law. So how do you differentiate between the two? Why? Is there a sense that we need this thing called necessary guilt, that, as I phrase it?
No, I don't think we need guilt at all. Like there are many psychopaths who don't feel any kind of guilt but can still understand morality. One example would be a Christian, David Wood. He doesn't feel any kind of moral sensations whatsoever, but he can still understand morality. So I don't think guilt has any basis in morality. Guilt is simply a feeling, a recognition of something we've done wrong, or a feeling that we have done something wrong, but it's not required for morality. Even if we didn't feel anything, there would still be a right and wrong there. So
It's
no, I don't think
interesting
we
you
need that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up David Wood. He figures largely in my recent book because he is a fascinating man. He would beg to differ with you, and again, I'm not debating with you. I just know, having studied him very deeply, he is a psychopath, and he was a psychopath. And what happened, just for background, is that he decided that he was an atheist, that all that matters is the survival of the fittest, and he decided that the best thing to do to kind of advance his own theory would be to kill his father, and not only to kill his father, but to do so in the most gruesome way possible. So he proceeded to approach him from behind, used a hammer, didn't kill him, but severely maimed him to the point of brain damage. He was ultimately taken to a mental institution, then ultimately served time in prison, where he met a Christian. And at that point, he mocked the Christian and he said, this is all nonsense. But after thinking about it a little bit more, he became more of a believer and understood that he really needed something more than just his own mind. So he embraced the morality, but the morality of Christianity. And since then, he had, got out of prison. He now is advocating for Christianity, against atheism, sees atheism as a very destructive force, and even says that he's concerned, and I'm not saying that you're saying this, Tom, or I'm saying this, but what he would say, David Wood, is that we are breeding a society of psychopaths by taking God out of the picture. So it's interesting that you brought him up. He, for one, as a psychopath, would say that you need much more than just a sense of logic in order to do what is moral. He likens himself, by the way, a psychopath, to somebody who's a colorblind person. He doesn't have the sense of empathy that you and I have. That's one of the definitions of a psychopath.
Right. That's why I brought him up, was because the point is that you can have morality even if you don't sense it. So the feeling of
Got
guilt
it.
isn't required for morality, and he
Right. No,
gets
I
that
understand.
from Christianity. But other psychopaths can get that from logical systems or philosophical systems. The point is that guilt isn't required for morality.
Right. Okay. So look, I understand and I appreciate that clarification. For him, he learned it. He had to learn in the same way that he had to learn. A colorblind person would, as he describes it, a colorblind person would have to learn that the light on top means go and the light on the bottom means stop, or vice versa. I forget now which one is which, but you get the idea. So it's very interesting. And for him and for me, there's a sense that if you don't have a sense of guilt, and I'm not talking about the classic Catholic guilt or even the Jewish guilt, um, I'm talking about the sense of what I have done is horrific, is very wrong. The crime and punishment sort of wrong, from Raskolnikov and Dostoevsky, right? The reason why, I don't know if you read Crime and Punishment.
I did.
Okay. So you know from Raskolnikov, the character there, that the thing that does him in, I mean, he's very logical also. He decides that he's going to kill his neighbor because she's useless. She's a drain on society. She ends up killing not only her, but her sister as well. And what does his image is not because he
I thought it was his
loved it.
landlord, wasn't it? The landlord, the
It might have
old
been his
lady.
landlady. That's true. But in any event, what does him in is not that he left any clues. In fact, the detective who's assigned to the case is a bumbler fool. And what ends up happening is that because of his sense of that he's done something horrifically wrong, and he just keeps on nagging at him, goes crazy, and then eventually confesses to the whole crime. And then it's only when he's in prison that he discovers that the beauty of God and the morality and the Church of the Russian Orthodoxy. So this is but that's the fascinating part of me. I think that we all have this sense of this big imposing anvil of, let's not use the word guilt, of horrific wrong, right? This sense that I have done something horrible, or you don't want to do something horrible. That fear of doing something horrible is something that I think holds people back from doing these horrific crimes. That whether that's theft, whether that's lying, and more importantly, whether that's murder. So I guess that's one of the topics I was so curious about. And to sum it up, you say that we don't need that. We need it philosophically. We can get it philosophically. We don't need God to do so. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the feelings matter at all. I think it's true that morality exists independent of whether or not we feel it. So I don't think the
Right.
feelings of guilt or the fear of doing wrong really matters to whether or not there's morality. It can definitely influence us, but psychological influences happen for all kinds of reasons. To talk about the story you mentioned, it's a good fiction, but it's not actually the truth, because many people do kill and they don't feel that remorse, but it's still wrong. So whether or not they feel the remorse is irrelevant.
One of the things that I kind of evaluate, I'm very interested in numbers. I'm interested in probabilities. I'm interested in statistics. I'm quite good in statistics. That's kind of what led me partially to God in the first place. And we could talk about the odds in a moment. But one of the correlations that I've noticed, and I dug really deep into this, Tom, they did a study called the Violence Project, and it was put up by the Los Angeles Times. And this was prompted by the consecutive 3 mass murders that happened, mass shootings rather, that happened in 2018. One of them was in Gilroy. I think one of them was in Pennsylvania. But either way, there was 3 in the summer of 2018. And it was pretty horrific. And they wanted to understand, are there any commonalities among these mass murderers, and for that matter, serial killers, throughout history? And they went back as far as 1965. And they came up with 4 different conclusions. One is that they suffered, each one suffered something traumatic in their childhood. They had a very bad, abusive childhood. They saw something else among some other serial killer or mass murderer and decided to emulate it. And then, of course, finally, that they had access to guns or to something extremely violent. Those are the 4 things that they came up with. Lost in that, however, was something else that actually did show up in a very similar study by the FBI, no less, which is that none of them had God in their lives. So that was fascinating to me. Now, that doesn't mean that all people who don't have God in their lives are about to commit mass murders or serial killings and so on like that. But what is consistent is that those who do commit those mass murders and those serial killers tended not to have God in their lives at all. So there were attempts to make these people into Christians in particular, but those turned out to be false starts. They were not accurate. What do you say about that? Again, it's not a proof of God one way or the other, but there's a correlation, and I'm not saying a causation, but it seems to be a correlation.
That the top 3 were atheists? Oh, that's not a correlation.
No, there's a long list, not just the top 3. It's
actually the vast majority of serial killers are religious. So the vast majority of them are religious. The most successful ones are atheists, which is typical because atheists tend to have a higher IQ, higher education level, higher intelligence level, and so they're better at usually whatever they're doing, which is why atheists have higher academic standings, higher wealth, more access to government. But
I wrote about this in my recent book, and I went through all the serial killers, every single one of them, and all the mass murderers since 1965, and not one of them was a Christian. I mean, some people had ascribed them to be Christians, but they weren't. Can you give me, I mean, I could be wrong, but because I thought I researched this pretty well. Can you give me an example of a mass murderer or serial killer was an avid Christian or Jew for that matter?
I can just Google it if you want. There's tons of them. But the vast majority of them are religious. Like if you just take any genocide in any Christian nation, that's all Christians.
I'll talk about that in a moment, but let's stick now to the mass murderers and the serial killers.
Genocide is a kind of mass murder, so
I agree. I agree with that, and we'll talk about that. But I'm talking more about sadly the classic killings where some guy goes, a nut in Las Vegas, for example, where he went about and killed 50 people, sniper fire, or what happened at Sandy Hook, or what happened in Gilroy. Those kinds of killings, for that matter, serial killers like Ted Bundy and Kaczynski and so on.
Well, again, so if we just go to the prisons, mass murder is usually defined as 4 or more killings. Most of them are Christian. Right. Most mass murderers in America are Christian. Like they're just not publicized.
Of that, Tom. My evidence shows otherwise. Where can you show me an example of one such person?
I could just go to the criminal records. Again, if we just go to the federal FBI statistics, the percent of atheists is 0.something%. The percent of Christians is like 60-something%. Most murderers are Christian. Most mass murderers are Christian. They're usually not the ones that are publicized about because they're less successful.
I look, you say the word most quite a bit. I'm just asking you for one example.
Again, FBI statistics on crime based on religion. That would be
right. Okay. So the FBI study that I found said that specifically the contrary. They said that the one thing that was in common among all of these were that they were not religious. There was, however, a very small portion that claimed to be religious one way or the other. It was about, I forget the number, it's about 5% of them altogether, and more than half of those were Muslims. Of the remaining Christian variety, those were simply people that were construed to be Christians by their neighbors, particularly Andrew Breivik, who was the famous mass murderer in Norway. I believe he killed some school children, served only 21 years, which is pretty horrific when you think about it. But nevertheless, he was more of an Odinist, but somehow they decided he was a Christian as well. So, I mean, other than that, if you can show me somebody who actually goes to church and actually believes in God and believes in Jesus for that matter, and was tight on that issue, then let me know.
I just pulled up the data. 0.7% of inmates are atheists in prison, and 60-something% are Christian. So the vast majority of murderers, rapists, arsonists.
I didn't ask that.
Every criminal.
I will get to that. I will get to that, but I didn't ask what the percentage of atheists were in prison.
Well, this applies to every category, including murderers and mass murderers.
I understand, but that's not the question. We're talking about mass murders and serial killers.
I'm adjusting that. This includes mass murderers.
Okay.
So of all mass murderers, most are Christian.
Okay, I wanted names, but it's okay. We'll move on.
Well,
One of the other
I don't
one of
like
the other
we don't.
things.
If you look at the FBI data, it's just the total number. It doesn't give names. I could like go to the prisons and like look for people who've killed more than 4 people if you want. It'd take a little more
Okay,
time.
so the FBI study that I actually quoted and researched deeply showed exactly the opposite of what you're suggesting.
Well, this is literally the FBI data, so your study is wrong. It's
okay. All right. Well, anyway, I dive deeply into this in my book, so I'm happy to review on that. Look, this is more of an interview. I'm not trying to debate you, and so I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm debating you. Now, we did say that we'll talk later on about the genocide nations, right? Obviously, we think about Germany and Hitler first, and then Stalin and Pol Pot and all those bad boys. So, what is your take? Because I remember when we spoke before in your podcast that your argument was that Hitler was a believer and a Christian at that. You
polytheist.
Also, I think. What's that?
Polytheist?
I think he was a pantheist at best, not polytheist.
No, polytheist. Like he believed in magic and miracles, and he did research into all kinds of spiritual stuff, and he was looking for like the thingy that you drink from, the one in
the Holy Grail.
Yes, Holy Grail.
Okay, all right. Okay, but that doesn't make him a Christian. I mean, let's not conflate these two things. There are a lot of people who believe crazy things, and pantheists are, certainly not the same as Christian. Polytheist, which
he definitely was not a pantheist. He could not ever be qualified as a pantheist. That's not logically coherent.
I disagree with you. That is a topic that I study deeply as well, and atheism kills. But look, I want to ask more deeply. That's the simple question. You said before that countries that engaged in mass murders were Christians. I mean, and did so on behalf of Christianity. Am I wrong?
Say that again.
I believe that you had intimated or said directly that countries that had engaged in these genocides did so with the backing, as Christian nations, like Hitler was a Christian of some kind. Now you're saying that that's not the case with him. He was a polytheist.
There's many of those. Yeah, like all of the Nigerian countries, all of the genocides by Christian nations, the witch burnings, the Crusades. Yeah, those are all Christian stuff. There's lots of those.
Okay, so I was expecting you to bring up the Crusades and the witch burnings. Do you know how many people died in the witch burnings?
No.
Okay. Do you know how long the witch burnings situation lasted?
I believe it was several hundred years in total.
Actually, the witch burnings, which you're talking about, at least the Salem witch burnings, total.
Well, no, that's only one example. That's not all of the witch burnings. That's just one example.
Okay. So a total of 19 in Salem died, and it was over a span of 2 years. And of course, the madness ended. It was long. It was
so the witch burnings was from a period of the 1400s to the 1700s, a total number of deaths of 35 to 50,000 executions.
Right. I don't doubt that. But you were saying that was done on behalf of Christianity.
Yes, because it was literally read from the Bible that this is where they got this.
Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting. So now we have to also argue, however, about atheism. So my position is, and I'm sure that you disagree with it, but obviously communism was an atheistic enterprise. In fact, it was the core tenet. And that's not me saying it. It's Alexander Solzhenitsyn who says it.
Nope.
That atheism. No, I'm quoting Alexander Solzhenitsyn. So just bear with me, and then of course I expect you to respond. So Alexander Solzhenitsyn said atheism is not just a tenet of communism; it's the tenet of communism. It's the core aspect of it. I would put it to you also that atheism was the core tenet of fascism, and Hitler. And for that matter, most fascists decided that Christianity in particular, and Judaism, of course, of which they had no love or fondness, were both despicable religions. They were feeble, they were weak. Hitler in particular seemed to be more impressed with Islam. This is all in his own writings. I mean, I don't need to convince you of it. It's there in his own speeches. So, look, in the great battle between whether or not Christianity has created more deaths than atheism has created more deaths, I would put it to you, if we were to compare side by side, and in my chapter, Murder by Numbers, I do put it side by side, that atheism has killed far more people, millions, I mean, to the hundredfold
Well,
and
atheism
anything.
doesn't kill anybody, so atheism isn't an ideology. So like
That's
saying that
that's an escape hatch, but
no,
I don't buy that. That's like saying, Tom, that that seatbelts are not necessary in a car. They don't kill anybody. Yeah, okay.
no.
Seatbelts themselves don't kill anybody. I
Well,
get that.
no.
The
That's
lack
not
of them
quite right.
don't kill them, but I wouldn't suggest not wearing seatbelts, or
No,
for
no,
that
no, no.
matter.
I just want to. I'd like to clarify that. So claiming that atheism is an ideology, or that atheism as treated by everyone today is equivalent to the atheism of communism, is like saying that all religious people who have murdered ever is equivalent to Jesus, or Jesus' ideology. The fact that some atheists do things, and you equating that that belief of atheism, their particular belief of atheism, with all atheism, is called a composition division fallacy. It would be like if I said your religion is exactly the same as Islam for flying planes into buildings. It's called a composition division fallacy. The fact that some people use that label and associate it with some things has absolutely no connection to anyone else in the world ever. So like none of the atheism today adheres to that at all. So it's not an analysis. You're not comparing it to atheism. You're comparing it to communism or communist atheism. Their particular version.
Look, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you that your argument that atheism is not an ideology. I don't buy it. I mean, you and I just simply disagree about this. But
well, how could it possibly be? Like, what is the ideology?
Hold on. Let me explain. To say that atheism is not an ideology is like saying not believing in law and order is not an ideology, or anarchy is not an ideology. So hang on, Tom. So this is, there are certain things that if you don't do them, bad things will result. For example, if you don't brush your teeth, I can guarantee you eventually, very, very quickly, in fact, you'll get cavities, right? So, or if you're an anti-vaxxer, right? Those people are people that don't believe in vaccines. Bad things will result from that.
Well, those are all actions. So like actions, not brushing your teeth, absolutely, that leads to things. But
to me,
beliefs,
it's tomato. The absence,
it's
like a lithograph, Tom. Either you see it or you don't see it. You can see it in the negative light. You can see it in the positive light.
Well, what do you think? What do you think the word ideology means?
Okay, this is not where I'm going. I want to also say.
Well, you said atheism is an ideology. Like, what is the word?
It is an ideology. It's a belief system, and you hold on to certain aspects of it.
Okay, what are the beliefs?
The beliefs are that there is no God. That what is
that's not a belief.
Fact, Tom, you got to let me finish. What there is no God, and that in fact, what orders the universe is random evolution, and everything happened that we see here in a random way, and everything is the product of randomness. That is an ideology.
None of that is a part of atheism. Like, that's not what atheists believe.
I disagree. I think that's exactly what atheism believes.
So I've got to respond to that. Like,
you may have a personal belief that is contrary to that. I get that, Tom.
Well, no, it's not about me. This is not about me. So what you got wrong is that most atheists don't believe any of that. Most atheists are spiritual. They believe in something that, like a spirit or some kind of spiritual realm. Most atheists aren't the scientific kind like I am. They do believe in spiritual stuff. They don't believe in evolution, many of them. They don't believe in random processes. Most naturalists don't believe it's all random. They think that they're determined, guided processes, so they're not random. So most of what you said, one sec. So most of what you said has nothing to do with atheism, and most atheists don't believe it. And the not believing in a God isn't a belief. It's a lack of belief. You're not. It's not a belief system. It's like not golfing is a sport, or not brushing your teeth is an ideology. It's not a belief.
It's a difference without significance, in my opinion, Tom. Because not believing in, going back to brushing your teeth, will lead to serious consequences, right? Well, likewise, hang on, Tom. Just a second. I'm a vegan. You may not know that about me, but I'm a vegan. I don't believe in eating animals, right? So. And the reason why is because I believe that it's unhealthy. I think it's bad for the planet. It's bad for cruelty to animals as well. So those are the things. So, but whether I call it an ideology or non-belief in eating meat, it's tomato to me. It's not as important. I don't want to get lost in the weeds here because we have so much more to discuss. But
well, just to clarify, like for me, ideology is important. Ideology is a positive set of beliefs that influence like something, and atheism just isn't that. There are positive beliefs. Naturalism is one. Humanism is one. Communism is one. Those are all ideologies. Atheism isn't. Atheism is just a description that you don't believe in God. So that atheism isn't an ideology. Like evolution is an ideology. Naturalism is an ideology. Atheism isn't.
I'll take it on your say. So I don't want to quibble with you about that. But I am curious what you said about most atheists, that they believe in some sort of higher power or naturalism. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to me that's very interesting, because at least when I was an atheist, I went whole hog on it. There's no God, and there's no substitute God. There's no order to the universe. To me, it was binary, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, and I actually like hearing what you're saying, Tom. But to me, the notion is that either there's a God, a creator that has given structure to the universe and created life for us, and including intelligent life, or there's not. It's one or the other. So I'm curious your personal belief.
Well, two things there. One is most atheists are humans like most humans, and so they have spiritual beliefs like most humans. They just don't believe in a God. That's the one difference. There's many who believe in ghosts and spirits and fields of goodness, like a Buddhist kind of a Brahmin thing. There's lots of atheists all over the world. Very few of them are scientific minded, like I am. It's a minority. But
Yes,
yeah,
you
my
are very
position.
scientific-minded. Yeah, and that's a great thing. That's why I love having you on my show. Well, okay, so that's very interesting to me. I did not realize that. So, what is TJump's personal theory of the universe, the origins of the universe, and the creation of intelligent life, for that matter?
Yeah, so I think that the universe, our universe as we see it, is a result of quantum fields, and that time and space are emergent from other more fundamental quantum fields that existed before the Big Bang and created the Big Bang. I think that life evolved from evolutionary processes, which are a result of emergent phenomenon of physical forces that are not guided by any mind.
Okay, so, but where does the spirituality come in then?
I don't believe in spirits. There's just other atheists do.
Oh, okay, all right. So I really was more curious about your own particular version of things. So let's take on your particular version, not to take it on, but just to get clarity, I suppose. One of the things that I'm fascinated about is this notion of irreducible complexity. You've heard of it, the expression, I'm sure.
Yep.
How do you jibe that with your sense of random evolution?
There isn't any such thing. There's no such thing.
Okay. Just for the benefit of our listeners and your audience as well, irreducible complexity, the concept is, and I'm going to say this in layperson's terms because I don't have the definition in front of me, is that you have to have, you can't, when you reduce it to a point where you simply couldn't have something that didn't go along with something else. So, example, a car, right? A car, if it just had wheels, it wouldn't be able to drive. You would need an engine along with the gas pedal, along with the steering wheel and everything else. They all have to work in conjunction with one another in order for you to call that a car and to have the benefits of driving that car. So that's irreducible complexity. Now, in evolution, and maybe Tom, you disagree with this, but in evolution, there are circumstances where things have to work in conjunction with each other at the same time. They couldn't have kind of met up with each other one after the other. Once one part was built, then another part comes in that kind of works very nicely with it. Example, we have two eyes, right? So two eyes are necessary for stereoscopic vision. You wouldn't necessarily have a cyclops first and then a mutation to have the second eye. Or for that matter, another example is the operations of the cell. The cell you can't have without the operations of the heart, and you couldn't have a heart without the operations of the cell. So they have to work in tandem with one another. And that's just a situation of two working together. There should be actually thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands that have to all work together. How do you jibe it? I'm not challenging you. I just want to understand you.
Yeah, so all reducible, what like Stephen Myers calls irreducible complexity, is explained in the same way you build a stone arch. So a stone arch is like stones that are stacked on top of one another in a big arch thingy, and there's nothing in between it. And if any of the stones were removed, everything would collapse. You can't live without any of the stones.
Right.
But to build a stone arch, you don't just put all the stones there together. What you do is you build a foundation, and you then place the arch on top of the foundation, and then you remove the foundation, and then you're left with a stone arch. That's how evolution works. So evolution works by adding in features that are primordial features that existed before the heart, before the eyes, before any of the completed phenomenon we see today. And those things before were very useful at the time. And as they become less useful, they get removed, kind of like how in the stone arch, you remove the support piece by piece.
Or like scaffolding, for example.
What?
Or like scaffolding on a building. I'm supporting your argument, Tom. I'm saying like
Sort of.
scaffolding, you need scaffolding of a building in order to build it, and then eventually you don't need it anymore.
Well, right, but I'm saying that each of those, the scaffolding had its own purpose. It did something
Yeah.
on its own. It wasn't just scaffolding, it had its own purpose. And so it became just scaffolding after the new thing evolved, like the eyes or whatever. And then the scaffolding was removed. But before it was removed, it had a purpose and it was useful to the organism. So that would be the only difference. But for example, one of the examples of irreducible complexity that is used is the butterfly and the caterpillar. Like caterpillars have no reproductive organs. There's no way for them to reproduce until they become a butterfly. So how could a caterpillar evolve into a butterfly? How could that possibly happen? Because they just don't have the correct pieces to be able to reproduce until they've gotten to the butterfly stage. So it's irreducibly complex that the butterfly couldn't have come about by evolution because, well, caterpillars can't evolve into butterflies because there's no way for the caterpillar to come about. But we know that caterpillars did actually have reproductive organs millions of years ago, and they lost them after they gained the ability to evolve into butterflies because they no longer needed them. So they had the scaffolding of the reproductive organs as caterpillars that couldn't become butterflies. But once they could become butterflies, they eventually lost the reproductive organs because they no longer served a purpose. So it's the scaffolding, like they had a feature, they evolved a new feature, and then they lost the old feature.
Right. No, I get it, but that's not really quite what I was asking. I was asking about really the notion of irreducible complexity, not where we get rid of things like the scaffolding that you just talked about, but rather that you need two things that, or at least two things that go hand in hand with each other. And to just go back to my car analogy, you wouldn't just say, well, it was great that we invented the doorknob for or rather the door handle for the car, and that was kind of invented on itself, and then we built a steering wheel, and then that's kind of, it might be convenient one day. No, it all comes together. It's built at the same time, and they all have to work together at the same time. That's the notion of irreducible complexity. And not to argue with it, I just trying to understand from you how you, because evolution has this lockstep fashion where you go one thing at a time, it develops, and then you have that leading to something else, presumably, just making things better and better. But I have to tell you, Tom, I never was satisfied when I was an atheist. When I learned about irreducible complexity, I just couldn't answer it as well. I see you trying to do that, but I still don't see the connecting of the dots.
Right. So that's why I brought up the stone arch example. The stone arch is made of like 10 stones, and each stone is working together to build the arch. You remove any one stone, the entire arch fails. So this has 10 parts, and you can make it bigger. You can go 100 parts, 1,000 parts, 10,000 parts. You can make a stone arch as big as you want, and each of the pieces are working together in tandem. And if you remove any one piece, the whole thing fails. So you need all of the parts working together. But you don't build them all at once. You don't just put them all into a stone arch immediately. What you do is you build a foundation. You build rocks underneath the stone arch.
I see. Yeah. No, I understand. But then for that theory to work, it would have to then, and for that to happen randomly, then the one stone would have to know that it's going to be part of a larger picture, and that ultimately it would lead to this thing. And obviously the stone doesn't know that, much like the door handle wouldn't know that eventually there's going to be an engine attached to this, as well as wheels wouldn't know that there's going to be, a gas pedal associated with it, to say nothing of the gasoline. All the things that have to work together. So, all right, I think we beat that dead horse.
I'd like to respond to that. So, like as I said before,
we got 5 other things I really want to explore.
Okay, so just give me 10 seconds. So 10 seconds. Okay, each of the stones that are built upon to get the stone arch had its own purpose. It didn't know anything. It was just useful in its own right for something before the stones above it got placed. So it didn't need to know that there were going to be stones above it. It was useful on its own.
Okay, I appreciate that. So moving on to something very similar, the notion of fine tuning. So obviously you've heard that phrase. I know.
You mean physics, right? The universe?
Yeah, the physics. Yeah, the creation of the universe, and it appears to most scientists that the universe is so finely tuned that to an absurd level in order to create the creation of life, and no less the intelligence of life. That if anything were even slightly off kilter to the 1 out of a quadrillionth percent, we wouldn't have the universe as we now know it. This was a conundrum to Stephen Hawking and many other scientists who developed the multiverse theory as a result, in order to combat that, the probabilities of that. I never found that very satisfying, Tom, because there is no evidence for a multiverse, for one thing. And it seemed like they didn't like the answer they were getting. So they kind of forced this new theorem in order to increase the odds that the universe would be apparently fine-tuned, when in fact it's not really that so fine-tuned. It's just, if you take enough billions of universes out there, or trillions of universes out there, well, then the chances of our having this universe increase exponentially. I was never satisfied with that, especially because I don't think there's any evidence for it. Do you feel otherwise?
Yeah, so a number of things there. First thing is that the multiverse theory is better than a God for many reasons. One is that in physics, you're not allowed to add in things that don't have a basis that has been demonstrated to be real. So like the reason we went with the multiverse is because it's a combination of vacuum states demonstrated in the Casimir effect and Guth's early universe inflation demonstrated in observations of the CMB. Whereas God has a bunch of properties that have no basis in physics. Omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent, eternal, non-physical mind. So God wasn't an option to try to explain the phenomenon multiverse was, because it was just a combination of physics. The fine-tuning isn't really a problem, because the fine-tuning, or for at least for the God debate, because in order to explain what fine-tuned the universe, you could just ask the same question, well, what fine-tuned God? Just like there are infinitely many variations of the way the universe could be, there are infinitely many ways God could be. Maybe God wanted a universe of just black holes, or just unicorns, or just puppies. Why? Right. What fine-tuned the nature of God to make him make this universe and not any of the others? And so there
Tom,
could be...
yeah, that's an excellent point. And I want to agree with you on something. It is a very fair response to say, okay, fine with your fine-tuning argument, but what about the fine-tuning of God? And this is not a conundrum. This is one of those things where we simply have to accept, I don't know what happened before God. We do know that there's a God, or we believe that there's a God. What happened to create him, that's a mystery. We have to know that we will never know everything, right? Just like, you and I were born in a certain year, right? I was born in 1963. Yes, I'm that old. But what happened before, I take it on faith that my mom gave birth to me. I mean, so my birthday is September 18, right? So, all right, well, I take it on faith that that's where I was born. I don't remember that, right? Likewise, I don't know what happened before that. I don't know a lot of things that have, I take it on faith that all this history that we learned about World War II, but American Revolution for that matter, it's not even a question of faith, I suppose, but there are historical records, but we weren't there. And we just don't know. We don't know exactly what happened before the first tribes, created the first villages. We don't know what language they spoke. We don't know what it sounded. There's a lot of things we just simply have to accept. We don't know. So as to your fine-tuning argument regarding God, I get that. We would like to know. We'd like to know, for that matter, what happened before the beginning of the universe, right? I mean, that's a very fair question too. But my problem with your answer is that it's not really an answer, to me at least. The multiverse argument that you just made is that it's a better argument than the existence of God. But there's still no evidence of the multiverse. I agree with you that you can say, look, Barak, there's no evidence of God, but I don't think that your multiverse argument is much better. In fact, I think there's far more evidence by definition, by the probabilities, that there was a creator. Okay, now this is, again, the creator versus God being the creator. I think there's far more evidence of that creation actually being out there. So because of the fine-tuning argument, and I think it's very difficult to get around that. I want to ask you now about evolution, generally speaking.
Oh, one second, give me 10 seconds to respond to that. So
yeah, sure.
You said evidence by definition. I don't think there is any such thing as evidence by definition, but the reason the multiverse theory is better is because when you're comparing some unknown phenomenon, the best theory is the one that only uses parts that have been demonstrated to be real and not imaginary. The multiverse theory only uses parts that we know for a fact are real, that we can test in a lab. The Casimir effect and early Guth's early universe inflation, whereas God has lots of parts that have no evidence, have never been demonstrated, and that's why physicists don't use that hypothesis, and they do use the multiverse because it's things we know exist in physics.
Okay, but there's no evidence of multiverse, so that's the problem that I have. I want to move on to the fossil record, and for that matter, and very related, how long? This is something that always bugged me when I was learning about evolution. How long does it take for an evolutionary adaptation to take hold, to become the new norm? So whether that's, I don't know, changing the color of skin as a fairly minor adaptation, to something much bigger, the creation of a hand, for example? How long does it take evolutionarily?
It can take as short as 5 minutes. It just depends on the environment. So, for example, if a virus hits and kills off everyone in the group other than the one person who's immune to the virus, or the two people who are immune to the virus, well, then their genes are going to take over. So it just depends on what the environmental factors are and how successful one trait is over the others.
Right. Okay. Uh, okay. 5 minutes. I've never heard that before, but I accept it. What about the concern that a lot of people are raising in the evolutionary debate, that the evolution always seems to be, always approaching a progress, always an improvement of some kind? And why isn't it that it just turns into something either neutral or even descending? And for that matter, and this is the next question, why don't we see more in the fossil record of these strange anomalies, as opposed to what we do see, which is we don't see these transition animals very much. People claim that there's a transition between Neanderthals to Cro-Magnon man, but other than that, we don't really see examples of three hands, for example, or I don't know, three eyes. How do you respond to that?
Well, three hands and three eyes were never really beneficial. I mean, we do see three eyes. There's lots of animals with lots of different eyes. But
a mutation would suggest something akin to that. I just pulled that out of my butt, but you understand. You could also argue, I don't know, that you have a third ear. Or just one ear for that matter. How come we don't see those kind of strange mutations more frequently?
We do, but they're usually in pairs. They're usually, because your body is mirrored. It takes less energy to make a copy on this side and on this side. So there's never usually like one of anything. It's usually two, which is why we have 8 eyes in spiders and 8 legs in octopus. We do see multiple legs and multiple ears. There are many animals that have 4 or 5 ears. We do see those all the time, but every single species is a transitional fossil. It's really strange that the creationists say, you've never found a transitional fossil between that thing and that thing, even though those are both transitional fossils between 2 other things. So every time we find something, they're like, well, what's the transitional fossil between that and the other thing? Well, they're all transitional fossils. But to answer your main point, we do see those. There's one great example of a fish in a cave which had eyes that could see very, very well. And as they evolved in this cave, they lost the eyes. They devolved the eyes because they were no longer useful in that environment. So we do see those all the time, where you have one adaptation, and as it becomes less useful, you lose it.
Right. But okay, so those are examples, and to bring up your point, actually, the first thing that I would say as when I was an atheist is like, well, what are you talking about? There are people who have darker skin and lighter skin, and people, like for example, the Nordic people from Norway and Sweden and northern Germany, for example, they tend to be taller, and the reason for that is because their bodies are elongating in order to get more sun, right? So I'm actually agreeing with you, Tom, here on this one, but that's the reason why they tend to be taller in the northern reaches, because you want to get more surface area for sunlight. So likewise with darker people in hotter regions, right? You tend to see darker skin in darker regions. But what doesn't answer, what evolution to me does not get answered, is the DNA sequence, does the extraordinary complexity of the cell, and how each cell is like a little universe unto itself, and in turn communicating with every other cell. These are the things that I find to be conundrums that would take, I don't know how many billions of years before they would actually get into that position. There's so many things that would have to work intricately with each other. Talk about irreducible complexity, right? So that's where I grapple with the evolutionary concept. I don't think, we now know, contrary to what Darwin knew at the time, we know about the DNA sequence. We know how complex that is and the programming that goes into it. So how do you relate to that? How do you respond to that?
Well, I'd say that all of the work in the field has indicated that, yeah, naturalism is true, and that it came about from abiogenesis, because that's the hypothesis that's actually making progress and making successful predictions and making discoveries, because that's the one that is right. And so I did want to ask, do you think when we do discover how to make a living cell from non-living material, would that change your mind? Because we're going to do it.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. If we could recreate a cell or just an amoeba for that matter through just natural, even through in the science lab, but it would have to be naturally occurring things like they're trying to say with the primordial soup in the ancient days in the beginning of life, right?
Well, I
If
don't
they
think that
could
matters.
somehow,
Like, that's one thing I did want to bring
to
up is
me, to
that,
me it matters a lot.
well, I wanted to clarify. So
Yeah.
the ability to create life from non-life, I think, matters more than doing the early Earth environment, because first we're going to demonstrate it can happen naturally somewhere in the universe, and then we'll
Okay.
try to figure out how it happened on Earth. So I think the first thing we're going to discover is just how to do it, how to go from non-life to life
Oh, I
anywhere
see.
in the universe, and then we'll be able to do it more specifically to the Earth environment.
I think they would have to recreate it in the primordial sense first. Before, I mean, you asked me, would I believe? That was what it would take for me to believe, because I think I'd be very surprised if we one day create life out of non-life, completely non-life. I mean, nothing that's cheating in the sense of using some sort of carbon matter. In other words, to create a rock, life out of a rock, and that would be something. But I just don't see that happening
Well,
one day.
carbon
But
matter
I'm gonna ask,
isn't living. Carbon is a non-living thing.
I agree with you. I'm simply saying I didn't want to conflate these things.
Oh, gotcha.
So I'm answering your question. That would be very impressive to me. But what we know is that scientists have tried many times to try to create life in the primordial soup sort of sense, and they have never been able to do so. So I don't know what to say about that. It's an interesting argument, but it's never been done. And with all our efforts to try to recreate that scenario, we've never created life out of non-life. So that's I think a problem, and that was a problem for me. The next thing I wanted to ask you about is your own personal belief, and I appreciate you raising this. Do you believe, TJump, that there was a beginning to the universe, or do you think it was static all the time?
Well, there's a beginning to our universe, but I don't think all natural things had a beginning. No. So our universe had a beginning at the Big Bang, but there was definitely natural things before that.
Okay. What do you? I'm just curious now. What do you believe was in existence before that?
The quantum fields that predate space-time, that created space-time.
Okay. All right. And you don't think that God was involved in this whatsoever?
No, I see no evidence to think that there is such a thing as a non-physical mind, but I see lots of evidence to think that quantum fields do stuff.
Okay. Let's see. We talked before when I was on your show, Tom, about free will, and that was one of the things that opened the door for me personally to accept that there was a creator, and then ultimately to believe that that creator was the same as the God of the Bible. Your response, if I recall correctly, is that free will is an illusion. It's not really there. First of all, do you still believe that? I assume you do. And secondly, on very related topics, do you believe in consciousness and self-awareness?
Yes, consciousness and self-awareness is real, but free will is impossible as far as I know.
Okay. Consciousness is a conundrum for many scientists that they still can't understand. Now, as an atheist, I would have responded easily to that by saying, look, it's just a matter of time. The fact that we can't understand that right now doesn't mean that we won't understand it one day, right? But still, it's a conundrum. The sense of the me, the I in Barak Lurie, the I in TJump, meaning the letter I, right? Not the physical I. That is something that is such a conundrum for scientists. Where do you stand on that, and how do you feel about that? Is it explainable? Help me with that.
Yeah, there's tons of conundrums in science. All of them are best explained by the things we have evidence that exist, and not by making stuff up that we don't have any evidence for. So yeah, there's obviously a lot of things we can't explain. And
Okay.
so I don't see why that would matter. It's just we can't explain it, therefore God is is an argument from ignorance. So obviously there's
Well,
lots of things we can't explain.
I'm with you on that. That's the argument I would have made as an atheist, but it still troubles me, because the binary sort of argument to that, and the corollary argument to that as well, then it was created randomly. Consciousness is so complex and so difficult to achieve. We cannot do it artificially ourselves. We can only artificially create that semblance of intelligence and consciousness. It appears that Siri is talking to us and responding to us with its own consciousness, and even says the word. It could be programmed to say, I don't know about that, or let me think about that. but obviously it's an artificial construct. So how does, I'm trying to understand about how you explain the evolutionary adaptation to the point where we get consciousness, which you acknowledge exists.
Well, it's determined by physical forces, so it's just not random. It's a determined process that is emergent from other physical forces, kind of like how stars are emergent or tornadoes are emergent or hurricanes. It's a thing that results from emergent properties of determined physical forces, so it's not random.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Next thought is, who in your mind, well, no, let me ask you this different question. It's related. Where in your mind, or where does science come from?
People,
We all love science.
humans made it up.
Yeah, I agree. Humans made it. But more specific to that, where does the notion of science and our love of seeking the truth and the beginning of the universe, for that matter, all these questions that we're now posing, where does that come from originally? Does it come from the Greeks, for example? Does it come from the Romans? Because to my mind, science really was born with the university as created by the Catholic Church. And I'm not a Catholic, I'm Jewish, right? It created the notion of seeking one truth, and the notion of the monotheistic God developed the notion that there was one truth out there, as opposed to the polytheists, where they were fighting among each other. They couldn't care less about the way that men treated each other. But this God, this monotheistic God, not only cared about the way that man treated man, but also the notion that there was one truth to everything. There was one beginning, there was one everything. There was one law of physics. And that's what spurred many Catholic and ultimately Christians and Jews to seek out science in a sense of finding out God's truth. What do you have to say about that?
Definitely not the case. So science was invented as a necessity from survival of the fittest. So like someone invented an arrow, their culture won. That they would take over every other culture. And so as we discovered certain technological things about the universe, you gained a significant amount of power over other people. And so there became this arms race of discovering things about the universe, because the one who got the best arms would win and own everything. And so there became a selection factor for us to pick the learning humans as the ones that would reproduce more. And so it became an ingrained part of human evolution that we desire to learn and to grow, because it's something that gives us the ability to have control over other people and over nature and survive more. So it has nothing to do with Christianity. The Christianity was the incarnation of the modern church, or the modern scientific method, because it was just who was in control at the time the modern scientific method was invented. Had nothing to do with the God. Everybody did this. And I don't know what you mean when you said polytheism. One second. I don't know what you mean when you say polytheism didn't care about people. Like the golden rule originates from Hinduism before Christianity or Judaism were ever invented. So polytheists cared more than Christians did.
Well, I don't know about that, Tom. I don't think you could say that. The polytheism, obviously we know about the Greek gods and Jupiter and Saturn and so on, Zeus.
Hinduism predates all of those.
I understand. They all were at war with each other. They all, they descended and have sex with humans and had half gods, and you get the idea. They were very little interested in the morality among men and a code of conduct, for that matter. So I'm not saying that there weren't codes of conduct in predating Christianity. Of course not. I am saying, however, and I would like you to admit that most of Christians. Most of the great scientific discoveries, that there was an explosion of scientific discoveries as a result of Christianity and Catholicism and Judaism, where you look at these incredible inventions and discoveries, Newton and Galileo, and yes, even Galileo, Mendel, and of course Francis Collins and the Genome Project, and then the Big Bang, discovered by no less than a Belgian monk. So many of these, in fact, the vast majority, the vast majority of these were discovered or created by Christians. And again, you could say, I suppose I would say in response, Tom, well, that was the modus operandi of the day. That was a default structure. They happened to be Christians. And so now you're making a correlation where it's not a really fair correlation. In response to that, I would say, no, these people, most of them wanted to discover their discoveries because they felt it was to bring them closer to God, and they want to share their discoveries with everyone else. And this is said by Newton. It's said by Georges Lemaitre, the guy who discovered, the origins of the Big Bang.
He invented it. He didn't discover it. He's invented it.
Okay, well, whatever. Discovery, invention, fine. I think it would be discovery, but whatever. The point is that he did so because he knew in his own mind that the Bible said that there was a Big Bang, and that was his map, as it were. And he said, I'm going to find it. And sure enough, he found it, much to the chagrin of Einstein, who felt that Georges Lemaitre was on the wrong path, but Georges Lemaitre was right. His own theory, Georges Lemaitre used Einstein's own theory of relativity to prove that there was a Big Bang, among other things. It's fascinating. Anyway, I think that the sheer number of Christian and Jewish scientists out there who went about finding their discoveries and to some extent inventions is so legion that it's hard to say that science as we now enjoy it did not benefit greatly, in fact, predominantly from Judaism and Christianity.
Well, again, that's demonstrably false. Like, they just attributed it to religion. It was already an inbuilt psychological thing that all humans had. The people who make the most discoveries are the ones who are the most technologically advanced. Unironically, the greatest goat herders and greatest farmers and greatest chicken farmers were also Christians at that time. That doesn't mean it had chicken farming evolutions had anything to do with a god. It just means that they were the most technologically advanced at the time, and so they used post hoc reasoning to try and justify it from their religious perspectives. We know for a fact that these happened. Many scientific discoveries happened way before Christianity happened. The fact that most of the modern stuff is only due to the fact that they happened to be in control at the time and be the majority at the time. And if there's another majority in the future, then they will be the ones to attribute it to whatever ideology they think is correct.
Right. Well, that's what I said before. I mean, I think you're right in that you're arguing exactly what I would have expected. And that's what I used to argue, that it's the default religion. It was kind of the community around, and they were imbibing that in the mother's milk. And to associate that, Barak, with Christianity is just not a fair correlation.
Well, but that's to clarify.
I'm just kind of mirroring your point.
Right. I just wanted to make a clarification. This has been proven. We know for a fact this is an evolutionary feature. We can see it in other animals. And so the fact that this feature of desiring to try and discover things is something we know had nothing to do with Christianity. They just post hoc attributed it to their belief in God.
Well, I don't know about that, Tom. I think that you got a problem with that argument because the huge jump in science and scientific discovery was so exponential after the advent of Christianity in particular, and Judaism to a lesser extent, that it's hard to not say, wait a minute, there's this advent of Judaism / Christianity and have this enormous jump in science. Likewise, I mean, in a very similar argument with capitalism really took off in an exponential way in the 1860s when the capitalism from America was unleashed, and now we see these extraordinary inventions and everything else. You could say that just happened to be, but the correlation is so strong that one ultimately leads with the causation conclusion. But finally, on that point, Tom, you look at these Christians and these scientists who develop these, they themselves are saying over and over again that the reason why they made these discoveries was to be closer to God, to find God. It didn't even, a lot of your things that you're saying, they're all good and well when it's for the discovery of the arrow, the creation of a better shield. I'll even argue that point for you. There's a lot of things to make a telescope or make binoculars so you can see the enemy better. I get that. But there's a lot of science that is utterly unimportant, or at least at the time it's unimportant. Like, who cares whether a certain galaxy might be 100 billion light years away? That won't affect us in any way. In the future, we don't care about black holes. There's a lot of things we learn anyway, regardless of whether it might be useful to us on an evolutionary basis, right?
Well, that's also due to evolution. So evolution causes us to expand in any direction, and then the ones that are the successful survive. And so, yes, science, we have desire to learn things about all kinds of stuff, whether it's useful, because occasionally we discover things that are really useful, and those do very well. So this innate built desire to discover is important to humans because evolutionarily, sometimes that gets us a lot of rewards. So yeah, those are all explained by just evolution.
Okay. I mean, look, then why don't I mean, I'm going to say rhetorically, why don't the other animals, I'm using the phrase other animals because that's an atheist approach. Why do animals not have that same sense of discovery?
They do.
They are living today as they did yesterday, as they did with their generations in the past. They don't even know the previous generations. They won't know their generations to come, and they survive. You know, the leopard is surviving. The cockroaches survive. They don't need this inherent sense of discovery. That seems to be unique to humans. And I guess the question to you is why?
They do. Other animals do have this. This is why we see animals learning how to use sticks and things to hunt that they weren't before, which is actually a relatively new thing. It hasn't always been this way. Animals do learn and discover. It's just slower for things with a smaller brain capacity.
Well, with all those billions of years that we've had, you would think that the caterpillar and the butterfly would ultimately evolve to something akin to the human. I mean, at some point, no?
No.
That's a concern I have. I mean, of all the animals, only humans seem to have these incredible differences, not just the capacity to discover, but the capacity to appreciate beauty, the concept of free will. I know you reject that, but I don't. The concept well, what am I just going to say? Of beauty and love, for that matter, the concept of a sense of the future and the sense of the past, the notion of history, and the notion of science, for that matter. It is so unique to the human animal that one has to scratch one's head and say, why are we so different in that regard? In many ways, animals are wonderful that we have so many animals, because we get to see the differences between us on the one hand and they on the other.
Well, that's really strange because animals have all of those things. Like appreciation of beauty is actually really easy to detect. We can just measure the serotonin levels when animals listen to music or when they see certain scenery. We notice that, oh, look, they're much more relaxed. They have a much more release of this certain set of chemicals in their brain, just like we do when we experience beauty. The reason we experience beauty, like one of the famous beauty studies was in hospitals, where you have half of the hospital is facing a parking lot and half is facing open field. The people who are on the open field side healed quicker because they experience beauty, and that's purely because of evolution. If they're looking at something that is more comforting to them.
Yeah. At the same time, Tom, I have two dogs. I doubt they'll ever look at sunset, no matter how beautiful it might be, and say, "Hey, Fido, what do you think? Isn't that an awesome sunset?" Okay, that's one thing.
But that's not beauty. So that's
Okay,
doesn't matter.
Well, I think it is beauty.
That's just an example of one thing which we experience as beauty. But beauty itself is a feeling in the brain, and animals do get that feeling just like they get all the other feelings humans do, just to a lesser extent.
That's your definition of beauty. That's not mine. Another thing that I would demur to you on is this. You say they have the appreciative music. That's a far cry from actually, for example, creating music and understanding the nuances of music that we humans have. So it's a far different cry. And I would dare say that our love of music and our creation of music is hardly necessary for an evolutionary point of view. Likewise, our appreciation of beauty, the sunset kind of beauty that we just talked about, is not necessary for
animals do create music. They're called birds.
Okay, now the birds create music for the sake of calling each other. They have unique sounds, but that's not the same thing as a symphony.
It is. It is the same thing that we do.
All right. Well, we'll agree to disagree on that, Tom, because I just don't think you can say that seriously.
Well, I can, because our music, all that music is a series of patterns that makes us feel a certain emotional sensation, and we're doing that deliberately, whereas animals do it evolutionarily. It's the same thing. They're both creating music in order to create an emotional sensation within us. We just do it artificially because we have bigger brains. If birds had bigger brains, they would do it too. It's not like a complicated thing. It's just a different brain pattern.
Okay, Tom, I understand. Now, what about humor? I mean, humor is fairly unique to humans, as far as I can see. Hold on. Let me go through my little thing, and I know you disagree. But the Jerry Seinfeld, or take your favorite comedian du jour, and then kind of explore with that. I would say to you that there's, what is the need for that kind of humor from an evolutionary point of view? You would never say, why did Fred die? Why did Fred's ancestors die? Well, he wasn't funny enough. Right? I'm being funny for the sake of, articulating a certain point. I don't see that. I think that animals play. I think that's, clearly evident. You can see my two dogs and they play with each other all the time. I don't think that's the same thing as humor. There's a depth to that I don't think can be explained by evolution. What do you have to say about that?
In 2009, research showed that relatives, including chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans, all produce laughter-like sounds when tickled, as well as they wrestling and play chasing that suggest that humor is our ability to laugh like came from humans and great apes, the last common ancestor. 2015, scientists showed that chimpanzees make laugh faces just like humans do. Dogs are known to have a kind of panting and laugh that is suggestive of humor. It's not only in humans.
Okay. All right. So just to respond to that, I would say I think your equation there is very, very attenuated at best. I remember arguing with an atheist once, not you, and I talked about the creation of civilization and that humans, our ability to create civilization is unique to humans. He argued, "What are you talking about? Ants? I've seen whole civilizations created by ants." I said, "Okay, I don't think you can take that seriously. I'm not going to take it seriously. There's just no comparison."
Well, I'd say civilizations are in like chimpanzees and other large social animals. I mean, I don't know.
No, they have groupings, they have social orders. Yes, I agree with that.
That's what civilization is. Ours is just more advanced.
All right. Okay. Let's move on to this is more a question I have for you than a challenge, Tom. The more we learn about science, the more it seems to jibe with what we learn from Genesis. Okay, and when I talk about Genesis, I'm talking about the Hebrew translation of the original Hebrew. I speak a good deal of Hebrew. There has been some conflations and mistranslations of Genesis, but we know, for example, much to the chagrin of atheist scientists at the time of the Big Bang, that there was indeed a beginning of the universe. So that's like the first obvious go-to thing that I would say. We know that the paleontology has shown us that the arrival of life on Earth more or less matches the claims of Genesis in terms of water, for example, being the first environment for life, and then eventually animals going on land. They even talk about the dinosaurs. They don't call them dinosaurs; they call them the large reptiles. So, where's your take on that? What do you think about that? I'm sure you disagree, but I'm curious where your argument is there.
Yeah, so pretty much everything in geology and evolutionary biology disagrees with everything in the Bible. Like it's been wrong about pretty much everything. Like humans, not first. Adam and Eve, nope, definitely not first.
Genesis doesn't say that.
Plants not first.
Does not say that. It does not say that. No, it says life comes first from the sea, from the water, and then eventually the mammals came later on, and then eventually Adam and Eve. So I just know the Bible.
Right. So the consensus is that the Bible is literally wrong about everything in that in every consensus of every academic field.
Let's not, Tom. That's not a. You argued this before. You said the consensus is, and that's. Yeah. It's not that appropriate debate tactic.
No. So if you say that's not what the Bible says, and I say nope, the consensus says you're wrong. Like your opinion on your interpretation is just your opinion. One sec. I just want to clarify. Yeah. So what you're doing is called ad hoc reasoning, where you're taking ambiguities and trying to make it fit the science, which anyone can do with any book. When we actually take the data and we actually take the Hebrew, it literally fails. That is why it's not taken seriously in any of these academic fields. That's why I bring up the consensus, because when you do read this from an academic perspective, it does not work. Okay,
so look, one thing we do know is Genesis says what it says, right?
Yes, it says what it says. That is true.
Exactly right. So we can agree on that. We can also agree that paleontology has shown us that the arrival of the animals have arrived in a certain order. I put it to you, look at Genesis, they match. And it's, to me, that was a concern. When I was an atheist, it didn't make me a believer right away, but I thought that was an interesting coincidence. But I thought, okay, it was a coincidence, including the Big Bang, of course, which now everyone acknowledges. But back during the Big Bang days, and I'm old enough, Tom, to remember when there were still challenges in school. I learned one year that the universe was static. I had always been static. I learned the next year that indeed there was a Big Bang. And then there was another teacher who told us that it was static. It went back and forth like this, like ping pong, until the fifth year or so when eventually it was, Big Bang was the Big Bang, and that's the way it ever happened. Tom, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and your insights are always so appreciated. I like the way you think. in many ways, we think alike. We are always seeing reason and statistics and probabilities. I came to God through science, through probabilities and statistics, and through logic. Your science, probabilities, and logic led you the other way, and that's fine. But we are of the same mind in the way we approach this. I'm with you. I never liked it when somebody would tell me, I found Jesus and I just opened my heart, or I found God for that matter, I just opened my heart, and that was good enough for me. I don't like that. For me, I had to be convinced from a scientific level, and I was convinced. But I understand your position. Let me ask you this: and this is the final question I have for you. I have doubts all the time about whether God is real. I feel very strongly that God is there, but every once in a while, I think to myself, I don't know. And then I eat tiramisu at a great Italian restaurant, and I'm back to believing in God again, right? But just without being cheeky, I just want to ask you, do you ever doubt? Do you ever think that there may indeed be a God?
Not in the kind that's perfectly good. So I have zero doubts that there is definitely no all good God. Could there be a designer to the universe who created everything? Possibly, but it's definitely not a perfectly moral being. So I don't have any doubts at all that if there is such a being, it has no interest in us whatsoever. So for me, the doubts come in about what happens in the afterlife, because the afterlife has nothing to do with a God. There's many different possibilities that may or may not have anything to do with evolution. And so that's the part where I have doubts, but not about a God as much. No.
All right. That's very fair. TJump, you are a pleasure to discuss these very important topics. To me, it's the most important topic to talk about in the universe. So it's really a pleasure, and I hope to have you on the show again. And I'd be delighted to appear on your show again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me on. I really appreciate it. It's always nice to talk with you.
All right. You too, Tom. Thanks a lot, and God bless. Take care. All right, Tom. Well, thank you very much for this. I really do appreciate this. It's really a pleasure talking with you.
Absolutely. You too.
And how often do you have your show? Like once a week or as it comes up?
I used to do it, my plan for the past 2 years has been doing it twice a week if possible. But trying to do it more almost every day now because I'm trying to grow my business. I've recently got over my major depression a few months ago, six months ago, something like that. And I've gotten more invested into trying to grow my business as my hobby. I'm more passionate about it. So I've been trying to do them every day, trying to start an atheist church kind of a thing, which is really interesting. Right. So I've been working a lot harder on doing them every day.
Atheist church, I guess they call it a humanist church, but it definitely is atheist. And it's actually a synagogue. What am I saying? It's a synagogue in LA, and they are thriving. They're doing really great. I know quite a few people there. I like them very much. They're good people.
So, now, what's the name of that place? I'd love to contact them.
I don't know them. I can get the name because I know a couple of people who are members there.
Yeah.
So they'd be delighted to have you come in. I'm sure they don't care if you're Jewish or not. After all, they don't believe in God. They'd be more like-minded with you being an atheist than being Jewish or not.
Yeah, I love the help, having some other groups to talk about how to do the tax process is just ridiculous. I'd love help on how to go through that for sure.
Oh, that's easy. I can actually help you with that.
Oh, yeah?
I can steer you to some 501c3 lawyers. I don't do that. I'm a lawyer, but I don't do 501c3. And they've done some really great work. So it's pretty easy. You should be able to do that.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate it.
Because I really like the way you think.
Thank you.
By the way, you might want to check out this book, The Science. I think this is inverted. I don't know if it's inverted or not.
Oh, no, it's right.
The Science of God. It's by Gerard Schroeder. It's about, 200 pages or so, 250 pages. It's a great read, very scientific. I blew my mind. I was already a believer in God, but it just made me believe in God all the more.
How do you spell the name? Or could you hold it up again so I can type his name, the author?
Sure. Gerald Schroeder.
Got it. Thanks.
He's written a few books, but this is my favorite. The Science of God. It's very straightforward. The other ones are a little bit too academic for me. This one is academic, but still accessible. So to people like you and me. All right, Tom. Well, thank you again for the delightful conversation, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Send me that stuff for the name of the synagogue and the 501c3 lawyer.
501c3. Yep, you got it.
Awesome.
All right.
Talk to you
Take
later.
care now. All the
Bye.
best. Bye-bye.
Recording stopped.
All right, guys, going to the after show on the Discords. I'll do the http discord.io/TJump. Pin message. Replaced pin message. Yoink. Social media. Discord. Doink. After show. I don't even know where I put it. It's up there. After show. There we go. Paste the countdown like this. That. And then put my camera thingy. Deactivate, activate, close. There we go. Camera thingy. Join the after show. Ask questions and stuff. Thank you for the super chat, guys. I did not read the super chat because it was his show, not mine. So, Youth of Dilemma. Brock, do you acknowledge atheists who don't believe in evolution? Oh, I brought that up in the debate because in ancestral spirits, ghosts, world is flat, etc. And if so, why? I did not. I should have read that earlier. Thank you, Youth of Dilemma, for the super chat. Thank you, Paul, for the super chat. Thank you, Mike, for the super chat. Appreciate it. Thank you, Cosmic. All right. Oh, this needs to go over here. Down here like this. There we go. I'll go on the after show chat thingy, which is where? The after show chat. Thank you for the super chat, Antipode Cereal. Happy Monday. Fixed my bad avatar with another random one. Not going to use the Canadian one anymore. The anti-Canadian flag. After show chat. After show chat. That off the general. After show chat.
Yo, Tom, what's up?
Hey, Frank, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Anything Barak brought up that was interesting to you?
It seems like the standard creationist stuff. I don't know. I think I've all heard it all before. I don't know if it was any new ideas that I haven't heard before, at least. Just the Discord and talk with the chair live. Just put me in one picture and the chair in the other. Interview the chair. It's an interesting idea. Alrighty. I guess I wonder what if it would work if I brought this, like, I really like the live show on the politics Discord. That's really successful. We should do those more often.
Didn't you have like a 6-hour one yesterday?
Yeah, like the guys, Randolph and Taco and those other guys, they host it every 2 weeks, fortnights. So I've been doing it there, which is really cool.
I did get the impression that there was just too many people talking at any given moment because it came hard to follow conversations when people would just pipe up.
I guess so. Like, because it is more like, but I kind of like that because in the Discord conversations, it's more hectic and people are dumb, a lot more dumb people. And so having someone to like mitigate the conversation and take it over when I just don't want to do it, I really appreciate that. I like that a lot. So I don't mind the fact that it's a little more hectic because if there's someone annoying, I can just stop talking.
And the best part is we get to constantly hear, "Let me finish."
I do actually. That is one thing I do appreciate about it is that I can demonstrate my impartiality. I can be like, the atheist is wrong about this or whatever, and the Christian made a good point there, or like I do enjoy that, showing off, demonstrating my ability to stay impartial and to show when Christians make good points or when the atheist is not addressing the point. I think that it's good to demonstrate that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there are bad arguments on both sides. I've heard some myself.
Thank you, Brute Facts Podcast. TJump's chair, drop that 0 and get with this hero.
Yeah, all those guys have been on the server before. Randolph Richardson, Taco, they've all been here.
Yep. Oh, shit.
Yeah. I wish we could do them here, but it's just the politics server is so much bigger.
Well, I
So
think
they
that's
got a
what
lot.
I was thinking was more like because they contact Doobie or whoever is the leader of the Discord and just ask them to reserve a time slot. And I was thinking we could probably just do the same thing. So we could reserve a time slot on the politics Discord and then do one and promote our Discord.
It sounds great.
And I would prefer to have like you guys in there with me for the same reason, because there's a bunch of idiots on Discord and it gets annoying to talk to them. So having a group of like us, the TJump Discord guys, to run those things would be cool.
Do you know how to reserve a spot, Tom? Like, have you talked to anybody about that, or?
Yeah, you can contact Randolph and Taco because they are friends with the guys who run it, and they can give you all the details. I need to do this too.
I'll look into it then and see what, because I want to do one too.
That would be I think that's a good way. Like, since like no one is really good at setting up debates on Discord. It sucks, but setting up like those kinds of Q&As on other Discords, I think, is a good way to build our Discord. So if we did do that more often, that would be great. Like if we could set up Q&As on other Discords, that would be amazing. Because it seems to be working. Like if we check our Discord growth numbers, the Discord growth numbers are pretty good when I do those. Oh, I forgot. Keep forgetting. Damn it. All right, let's bring up my Sony PS4. Is it on there? It's not on there? Is it? Oh, yeah, there it is. There it is. There we go. So, do we got any questions, comments, thoughts, plans for the future?
Did I hear right? Did you said PS4?
Yes.
Gotta get with the times to jump PS5.
I don't want to use the PS5 because I can't use my mouse and keyboard.
What do you mean?
On PS4, I use a Zim. Or no, it's is it Cronus Zen to use a mouse and keyboard. So right now I'm using a mouse and keyboard on my Cyberpunk 2077 on PlayStation 4.
I guess you meant like a particular setup, because a mouse and keyboard works on PS5 as long as you use USB and such.
Wait, for gaming?
Yes, because I use it for playing Final Fantasy 14 on PS5.
Check that. Can PS5 use mouse and keyboard? Which games?
Well, I play Final Fantasy 14 for the most part with
Well,
it. That's about it.
Not a shooter, so who cares? PS4 games that support keyboard and mouse too. There are PS4 games. Thank you for the super chat, Ryan Lyon. Atheist Church should have fun community events. Yes, that would be the goal. So the Atheist Church would be essentially around doing events and debates and things. It wouldn't be like church service as much. All right, I'll try. Let's go with pick a game. Cyberpunk 2077 PS5 mouse and keyboard. Has anyone tried using a mouse and keyboard with Cyberpunk?
Played it on the PC with the mouse and keyboard.
Keyboard and mouse function is not supported for Cyberpunk on PS4 or PS5. It's unhelpful.
What about the Xbox One X?
I doubt it. If one isn't doing it, the other one probably isn't doing it either.
How are we doing, TJump?
All right, how are you?
I'm good. I'm in a rabbit hole of your insanity because I watched your Jay Dyer video, and now YouTube recommends me because I'm subscribed. Only seems to be your most insane opponents.
Dumpster fires?
Yeah, dumpster fires, exclusively dumpster fires. What is the biggest dumpster?
Those are the best ones, man.
Oh, the J Dyer one is definitely the biggest one.
I like the Jay Dyer one because he's at least active. Some of them just repeat the same thing and then there's no point. But at least Jay Dyer's getting annoyed. You've got something to bounce off against.
Yep.
You should watch the God of the Scroll one. That one's funny too.
Have you done Flat Earthers? I think you have, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I've done 4 or 5 of them, I think.
Oh.
Maybe more.
I think you should do Eric Jewell. That would be the proper dumpster fire.
Do who?
I think you said Eric Jewell.
Yeah.
Who is that? A flat earther guy?
No, he's an anti-evolutionary / flat earther, whatever. He's the I'm going to interrupt you so you can't debate kind of guy.
Like Darth Dawkins, essentially.
No, he's not Darth Dawkins level. Darth Dawkins has some intellect. I don't agree with Darth at all, yeah? But he definitely knows what he's doing. There's some you can blame for being ignorant, and then there's some you know are just playing. And I think Darth Dawkins knows what he's doing to a degree.
Probably. I mean, how hard is it to understand that your arguments were argued 300 years ago during the Enlightenment and were shot down? I mean,
if that's all you've got.
Literally using 300-year-old arguments is not going to get you anywhere.
Oh, that's it. Someone mentioned it. The Alex Stein one, the Flat Earth one, was hilarious.
Oh yeah, Alex Stein is great. He is a funny dude.
He wants to be Tucker Carlson, doesn't he? That's just it.
Yes.
You can see it in the way he dresses, in everything about him.
He makes faces too.
Yeah. Well, I think he knew what he was doing there, didn't he?
For sure.
I noticed the politics server has a 1v1 channel and several of them. People do that. They just go into a room. It's got like a population of 2 and only 2 people allowed in.
Like Clubhouse.
That happens on Clubhouse?
Hey Google, all I know is biblically our Christological God has made it to where 1v1 rooms are available.
Interesting.
What is
Kind of
your
want to try
biggest
that.
obstacle?
Kind of want to try going to politics during one of these after shows.
It's a big room. It's a big Discord.
Yeah, it is.
Is it possible to make a stage with only one person? Yeah, of course you can, right?
Yeah, that's possible.
But then the audience can watch.
Mm. I would really like to get streaming options on TikTok.
I think you just have to do phone capture or something, right?
That's what I've been doing, but I don't like it. There is an option on TikTok that gives you the what's it? The stream key gives you a stream key where you can just send it straight to from OBS or whatever. But I don't have that option unlocked, which sucks. Shucks.
How do you unlock it? Is it a pay thing?
Nope, it's random. Just it randomly gives it to some people.
What about using BlueStacks or something?
BlueStacks, what is that? Oh, like that. I can do that, but that's the same thing. I don't want to have to open another program. I would just like to have it unlocked so I can use it with my OBS, because OBS has the option to stream to TikTok. You just have to have it unlocked. You have to have the stream key unlocked.
How do you find the stream key if you've got it?
Well, they have to give you the ability. If you don't have the ability, it's not going to do anything.
Oh, what? So the owner of the server has to give it to you. The owner of the Discord has to give it to you.
TikTok, the owner of TikTok, the app.
Oh, TikTok. Okay. Someone's asking for a Zen Shapiro rematch.
Yeah, I'd do it if it was on like a place that actually had decent moderation for sure.
Well, Scotty.
What's new?
Trying to remember who Zen Shapiro was.
Abortion debate 2 days ago.
Also known as the shit show.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was the thing with what was it? The when you're on the kill stream, that's a hideous platform.
Yep.
Seems like that's when TJump has most of his problems is when the moderation is really bad because they don't want to hear points. They don't want to hear arguments. They just want to keep talking.
Yeah, like I think that's a problem when there's a moderator who does literally nothing. Like if I'm moderating, it's fine. No one really cares because I can just mute them and that's fine. But if no one is moderating, they can just talk over me without stopping. That's a problem.
Well, that's because a lot of them are just a lot of people don't actually want to debate. They want to give their arguments the same arguments they do every debate on and on again and just be heard. And they don't really care who they're up against or what they're up against.
Well, that's not the problem. The problem is the moderators who just, if they're just yelling and screaming at you, they don't mute them to let them stop. Like, so I'm fine with idiots with idiot arguments, but if the moderator is literally not going to mute them when they never stop speaking, that's a problem.
What is this blood sport thing they were talking about?
That was the Jay Dyer host.
It's what's his name? Killstream. It's blood sports.
Ethan, Ralph Ethan or something.
Yeah, it's Ethan Ralph. Yeah, because he missed a Met.
Alpha Tour.
The guy who got beaten up. He went halfway across the country and got beaten up trying to find.
Oh yeah, who was he? Who was he fighting? Boogie 9188.
Yeah, that was from one. I can't remember who it was now. He was trying to go to someone's door. Yeah, I used to listen to Ralph years ago when I used to drink, and ages ago, and used to listen to Mr. Metica. And Ralph is not there. He's quite deranged when it comes down to it.
Oof.
All I know about the Ralph guys is he's had Destiny's on his show. So
Who's he?
You want to tell him about Destiny?
What?
Just the broad strokes. Like, who is he?
Oh, Destiny?
What about Destiny? Oh.
Yeah, he's asking
who is
you.
he?
He's asking you, Frank, to describe Destiny.
Oh, he's like this. He's like this leftist gamer guy, and he does debates against like different people. Like they'll bring him on this show, and he was at the debate con that Tom went to. So
Yeah, I debated him.
Does he call himself a leftist? Because that's a warning sign right there.
Thank you for the super chat, Jacob, for the chair wisdom from TJump's mouth and knowledge and understanding. Appreciate it. Oh.
Now, granted, I think American politics are like an abomination of logic and reason, but the way I was raised or taught politics, even like just high school level social science classes, was that you're supposed to go to the left or right on a political issue, not start at the left or right position and then justify your maintaining that position. So calling oneself anything other than a centrist would show one to be somehow unbalanced. And I'm curious when people just launch in saying, I'm right, I'm left. It's like, all right, there's a problem there.
Do you think people vote on policy, though, really?
Educated, smart people, yes, they do. That's typically why other countries aren't the dumpster fire the U.S. is.
No, I think people should. I don't think most people do, but I think people should.
Like, again, the U.S. is an anomaly. It's an abomination of logic and reason when it comes to politics. Nothing should be the way it's done in America.
England's not that far behind you. We had the EU. We Brexited. That was not done under policy. That was done under sheer feelings.
Okay, but you also have more than one political party, which means that any of those arguments need to, bridge the divide, essentially.
Yeah, everyone just got lied to a lot.
I don't know about that. Like, I don't think Brexit was like unjustified. I think it was perfectly reasonable to want to exit so that the EU you didn't have to pay them and they didn't have a say in your political policies. I think that's a legitimate point.
Yeah, there is an overarching point, but we are going to be worse because of it. And lots of the stuff we were told wasn't true. Now you could say that we got away from control, and I do agree that there's some good parts in that. But we were sold on a lot of lies that weren't true, if you get what I'm saying. So basically, I believe that there is a reason to do it, but I believe the reason that people were doing it was not the truth, if that makes any sense.
Because I thought that was, I mean, there were definitely things like that the Tories said that they aren't going to do for sure. But I think that the main reason people left was they don't want the EU and open borders and the policies of the EU. That was the reason people mostly left. It wasn't like everything else, like the NHS stuff. That wasn't like a huge issue. Like the main reason was they just didn't want the
border problems are just the same now. We had more control over it when we were in the EU. We had more data to know who was coming over, and we had more stock, and we could use other countries.
But like the majority reason of why people voted for Brexit seemed to be what they just didn't want EU interference in policy making. Everything else, the things that were like lied about by the Tories, those were really like less important. That wasn't like the main reason why people left. So I don't see why that would be like as like people were lied to. Like not really. Like they made some promises that obviously they weren't going to keep. That wasn't the main reason why people left. People voted to leave.
We got told amounts that weren't true. We got told actions that weren't true. We got told that we would control our own fisheries, which isn't true.
Yeah, but again, none of that was like the reason people wanted to leave. Those are like small issues that kind of like minor points, but the majority reason why people wanted to leave was don't want EU in policy. So like bringing up the minor issues that were some lies or some fabrications isn't really like, I don't think it's relevant, because the reason most people wanted to leave was just they didn't want EU in power, and they got it. They got exactly what they voted for. The little stuff was like, okay, there's some lies there, but doesn't really matter. It's not like it's going to change most people's minds.
I think a lot of people have come back from wanting it with the after effects, if that makes any sense. But I would agree with you sentimentally, and also on the fact that there was a lot of people just shouting kind of sovereignty, of wanting that, and I just don't think that that's necessarily a good thing for our country.
Why would sovereignty not be a good thing?
Because it's meaningless if it doesn't affect you, is it? What am I gaining from it? If it's better, if I'm in better state with another country partnered with me, and I have better trading deals with that country, and I have better options with those countries, then I lose them when I come out of it. And even if my country's in a better position, am I gaining anything by just saying, well, I've got my country?
Like I think that like because the EU made policies they didn't like immigration policies and other things that they didn't want to have allowed, the fact that you have sovereignty over those things was an improvement.
Well, only if there's an effect. At the moment, immigration is still a bigger problem. We had more control over it before because we knew the numbers and what was coming in, and we could use deals with France to deal with the oversurging of people coming over the borders. It's like the whole Northern Ireland thing now of borders, and we're having problems with that. Whether they want to negotiate a new deal.
Again, I think that they just wanted control over that and they got it. Like I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't see why. Like I don't see like a huge problem with the Ireland thing. Doesn't seem like it's a huge issue. Like
No.
I think the criticisms of Brexit seem way more overblown, and that Brexit really did get them what they wanted.
I think we're feeling it a bit more now.
Well, definitely there were going to be consequences for sure, but everybody already knew that. It wasn't going to be just like everything's perfect. But
well, we got a lot of the right-wing politicians said that it would get better a lot sooner, and they didn't really give us the information that we needed of how bad this was going to be. If you look at all if you look at Robert Peston and all those kind of those economists and people like that, they were telling us at the time that this was a really bad idea. How are you enjoying Cyberpunk anyway?
what?
I said, how are you enjoying Cyberpunk anyway?
It's pretty good. I hate the Dead Zone. The Dead Zone is just terrible for mouse and keyboard on console. You can't change the dead zone, which makes it so hard to use. But everything else is pretty fun. Blades, that's what I was looking for. Right.
Working my way through Bloodborne again.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it's a punishing game, but I enjoy it.
Hey,
Now, one criticism is that blades seem to be way more overpowered than literally anything else.
Do you stealth it most of the time? Because I've been starting, I've only halfway through like the first couple of missions, and I just have been avoiding killing anyone at the moment. And I don't know if that's the right tactic or you just go guns blazing.
No, that is the incorrect tactic because you get less experience that way. I've just been going around killing everyone I can possibly kill. Like I've been going up to the skull guys and killing the skull guys.
Well, because you start that game and I think to myself, oh, it's like GTA. As soon as I kill like 10 people, I'm going to have like the world on top of me.
But one thing I do need to do is turn off the nudity because if it streams, that would be bad. Exit to main menu.
hey, Tom. So what's your thoughts on the Biden administration so far? Any or-
All politicians are garbage. That is my position.
right, right.
Oh yeah. So go to politics. Mm-mm-mm. Bum, bum, bum. Wow, there's so many people in that. What is that? A Ukraine invasion watch. Wow. Politics.
Jesus Christ.
Mm. 1 month until spring. Are you gonna have the beach body? No, I'm not gonna have a beach body. I'm way too overweight for that.
Yeah, their server's always active. Politics server. I used to be on there all the time.
Yeah, I would definitely like to build our server up to that.
If Stage Discovery comes back, we might be able to do it.
Yep.
Someone wants to know if you ever play MMO RPGs like Final Fantasy 14.
I do play RPGs. What did you say? MMA RPGs?
MMO.
MMO? No, never. I hate massive multiplayer online games. I don't like grinding, and they're all just mass grinding.
Yeah, they're pretty much.
I want games that are skill based.
I understand about the grindy thing, but there was a time like back in the days of EverQuest, pre-WoW and stuff like that, when the grind was enjoyable because it wasn't just you repeating the same thing over and over again. There was quests involved and adventures involved. There was content involved in the grind. It wasn't just you sitting there at a mob spawn killing it over and over again.
Well, I think like the best game that did grinding was like Warframe. Warframe was tolerable with their grinding, but it still, the grinding became more than what was actually more than the content of the game, and I think that's a problem.
Yeah,
You got
there's the definite line that they cross and it becomes an issue.
I got into Warframe recently, and I will agree it's quite a good game, but you do get to a point where you're just grinding. But I agree with, was it Google who said older games? So like when I started off with Baldur's Gates games, and they were based kind of on that, and MMOs went off the like the Neverwinter Nights kind of model. They weren't so grindy, but then they realized they could make money out of just making you grind for longer.
Yep.
Yep,
Especially if
that's
it's
what
if it's a monthly fee game, the more time you have to spend playing, the more money they make.
Oh, okay. I'll give you one that I don't think is as bad. There is some grinding in it, but the Star Wars one, and it might be because the Star Wars one has a really good like plot base into it. Like the effects happen and things change, and it has a really good plot and story to it. But I don't think that one's as grindy.
The Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic SWTOR.
Yeah.
I played the first level, but I'm a soloist. I don't like having to actually like work with other people to do things, and that was the problem, was that you couldn't just solo stuff in that game.
Yeah, you do need other people. I got quite far soloing it, but it is really does get harsh after that. And I know what you like. I know what you mean. I like to play by myself. Strategy games?
I play Star Wars. No, StarCraft. I don't play. I don't like Age of Empires. I do like StarCraft.
I was playing one last night, Spellforce, and I did agree that the fact is, I just want a big base and the ability to build as many troops as I want, not all the other stuff.
I really liked, there was a Lord of the Rings strategy game I really liked. Middle Earth something something.
Battle for Middle Earth?
I think that was it, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's two of them. I think there's 1 and 2.
Yep.
I know Warhammer's just come out. The Warhammer 3 one.
Yeah, I really liked Battle for Middle Earth. That was a good game.
Yeah, Tom, is that a giant knife or a small sword?
It's a long sword, but it's pointed out forward, so it's like you know how people hold Japanese swords where it's pointed in front of you?
Right.
So it looks smaller than it is because it's tilted forward. It's actually a regular size sword. We need to get more theists in the server to like debate stuff.
Do you need
There-
someone to I was going to say, do you need someone to disagree with?
There is going to be a diminishing returns on that, though. I mean, if the more successful you are, the less theists there would be, right? So,
What? I don't get it. Like
Well,
Matt
if
Dillahunty
you're-
gets tons of theists.
I know, but every year it seems as though it's only the most extreme and the dogmatic that are left, the ones most unwilling to listen, not the ones that are open to reason and logic and debate. Those seem to be the reason why religion is trending downwards.
Right. The people that have good discourse have pretty much already left religion.
Well, I want ones
Yeah.
that bring in views. I don't care if they actually have good discourse.
Oh, well, that's
I
just
can- I-
dumpster fires. Then you can find them anywhere.
Yeah,
But
there's lots
it's-
of those.
It's weird you
I
said
can-
that though. It's weird you said that though, Google, because I was literally thinking that I was watching Atheist Experience it last night, and I hardly ever watch it, but it was on my YouTube list, and I thought to myself, how can they keep on having the same callers, like the same callers with the same arguments, different people, but they just constantly. Surely there's a limited amount of people who could bring into that show over the period of time.
You know, I can act as if I'm a theist.
I mean, if you're worried about them always bringing the same arguments, the dumpster fires are the way to go, man.
I can.
No.
Let's say I'll bring up the let's say naturalism argument. Can't you see that God created everything?
Nope.
No. Like I said, you got to go dumpster fire with this. It's the aliens in the Illuminati.
Oh yeah.
Like if you're not on board with that, then I can't speak reason to you. You're just a sheeple.
Well. I heard a new argument, by the way, in modern day debate against Aaron. There was a Muslim. He was claiming that you should look at God as like the master programmer, so you can see like as if we can program reality with computers and programming languages. God created the master of all language. He created the master of all computational models, and yeah, pretty much it.
It's all software. It's all everything's software. That's all he was repeating. I saw that as well.
Which would mean then that he is one of the most malevolent, dark-souled monsters ever could be, because he also created pain, suffering, child rape, murder, viruses, plagues,
Oh my
cancer,
God.
Yeah.
all
Oh, yeah,
that,
wow.
and allowed it to take place.
Yep.
He allowed
Well,
war. He allowed genocide.
Well,
He's a
that's
monster.
part of the game. Well, that's part of the game. You know, if you create a game, for example, like Warhammer, you need to give it rules, because it wouldn't be a fun game if you wouldn't have these rules.
Is God worse than the creator of Dark Souls?
I think so.
Dark Souls isn't even hard.
yeah.
Why do people complain about that? It's such an easy game.
I'm not good at those games. It was hard for me.
I had no problem with Dark Souls.
Bloodborne was probably worse.
Bloodborne
That
is
was a
so
good one,
easy.
too.
Like people complain about the easiest games. Like none of those are hard.
Those ones were a pain for me.
Play Ninja Gaiden 2 and then complain to me about hard.
That's
I
a good
played
game.
Ninja Gaiden.
I've played Ninja Gaiden 2.
Did you beat it on Master Ninja?
No.
Not yet. No. Now you give me a reason to dig that thing back up.
I've never came across to Warframe, but I'm just checking a YouTube video now. So it's like is it a third-person shooter?
No. There's melee weapons and ranged weapons.
You can switch between them quite quickly. It's got quite a good style to it. It's quite a fun little fighter, but it does get a bit draggy eventually.
Okay, yeah. See?
Oops.
I think it's on the Xbox Pass, or if you've got the Xbox Pass or something.
No, I got a PS4.
Is Warframe free? TJump.
Yeah,
What?
Warframe's free.
Warframe 3? What?
Yeah.
Warframe's free to play.
Oh yeah, it's free.
Yes.
Free.
Yeah, it's free on
FRE.
a
I was like,
PlayStation
3. There's only one of them.
No, I was asking for free.
Yeah, it's free. And one thing I really like about Warframe is the market, because you can trade stuff with other players and earn the money that you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah,
So
there's massive amounts of that game.
And I liked it because I got the rarest, like most expensive Rivens, the most powerful mods. Like I got like all of them, and I didn't ever pay a dime to the game. I never spent any money on it. So I really like that.
I think
Yeah, I like the economy in Warframe. It's a really good game.
Isn't that one of the selling points that you can get everything without paying money? Like even the
Yeah.
everything in it. Like there's no special unlocks you can only get by paying.
Well, no,
for it.
there are things you can only buy. You can't get everything because there's special stuff that you need to like pay for, like limited edition collector's garbage.
Yeah, if you really want it.
But is
But
it
anything
cosmetic?
that's
Is it
platinum,
cosmetic or functional? Tom,
What?
is it just cosmetic or is it actual improve the game?
Uh,
a lot of cosmetic
mostly
stuff.
cosmetic.
Yeah.
I don't think it would really matter if you did buy slightly better weapons in Warframe because it's not really that kind of game.
Yeah. Anything that's platinum in that game, whether it's a new color set for all of your gear and stuff, or some Cyandana like scarf or whatever, if you farm things and just sell stuff on the market, you can earn platinum that way and then buy it with the platinum that you earned from that. So there's a whole market surrounding it.
Yeah, he is correct.
Same thing happens in other games like EVE Online. You can basically grind normal money and then buy in-game advanced features.
Kind of.
Just takes a lot longer to get the platinum stuff that way.
Yeah.
Actually, not really. So, like, as long as you get some amount and you can start buying and trading ribbons, you can make a ton of platinum. I had like 10,000 platinum from just trading ribbons.
Holy hell, dude.
It's not even that much. Like, because I had a Lenka ribbon back when it was popular with critical chance, critical damage, and negative zoom. And I had most of my ribbons look like that. I had Plague Cure Breath ribbons with all of that critical chance, critical damage, negative, like whatever the useless one is that no one cares about. And I have
still
tons
need
of
to
those
get my
ribbons.
stupid amp built.
Amp.
That's not my fault.
Yeah. Remember, I had the Opticore ribbon, same thing, critical chance, critical damage, multi-shot, negative zoom.
No, I stopped playing right around when Rivens came out.
Oh yeah.
I'm an original player. Like back when it frickin' started. Way back, like 2013. Yeah, I think it's from 2013. I like the game a lot, but I only go back every so often now.
Yep, me too.
Yeah, I kind of touch it occasionally, and I end up doing one mission and then just stopping again.
Yeah. How many different consoles did that thing come out on? Obviously, the Xbox and the PlayStation, the modern ones, but I mean,
Yep.
How many of the older machines? How far back does that go?
I know it hit PS4. I don't know if it was PS3.
Yeah, I think it was PS4 it started.
Yeah, mine's on Station 4. That's why I don't know for sure. It came to me about the same time a machine came to me, so they're both quite new at the time. For me, anyways.
I started up Ark again and I couldn't get back into it.
They'd have that on Xbox One and Xbox, the PS5 now, wouldn't they?
Mm-hmm.
They'd have to.
Okay, yeah, it came out on the PS4 in November of 2013.
Yeah.
It was out on Windows only slightly earlier in March.
Yeah.
So, yeah, PS4. I had to look it up. I was like, was it?
Yeah. I got the Windows version that the machine I had at that moment in time couldn't run it. And then I got a hold of this PlayStation 4. He only had it for about 4 months, and that game was with it.
Yeah, no,
So
it's
like
a free game for console. Man, that's great.
Yeah. But it was with it, so I just said, hell yeah. He's already played into it a ways, so I was like, I just continued on. I didn't start over.
Have you seen Sifu yet? Have you played that one yet?
It's on my list. Haven't played it yet.
Yeah, I was watching Simon play it the other day.
Same.
I
It
would
looks,
also.
it looks difficult and complicated, but it
It does,
looks
but-
like it's fun.
But it looks like
playing
it's
it
one of
right
the.
now.
It looks like a short one, like one of those short
Yeah.
type.
Playing right now, I'm getting my ass kicked. TJ's
Yeah.
gonna be like, "Oh, it's easy," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay."
A politics Discord is blowing up right now. Holy hell. The Russian-Ukraine thing is blowing up right now.
Yeah, what's happening?
Quite a few things. 2 cities have asked for independence from
Yeah.
Ukraine in order to be like neutral, but they're on the border, so Russia's probably just going to move in troops.
You say this is posted somewhere in the politics server? Where?
All in there. They've got like a live updates in Ukraine section. There was a Security Council meeting this morning with the UN at like 7 or 8 a.m. my time. So that was like 4 hours ago. There was a bomb that went off in Russia. Russia blamed Ukraine for it. Russia claims that they captured 5 troops incurring from Ukraine as a claim. They also claim that Ukraine shelled some outpost shack. And none of it looks like it holds any water. It looks like false flag Russia shit.
I think they're looking for reasons to get in, right?
Yeah, he is. And now he's making a speech and roasting Ukraine.
When that man has to step down or has to leave office at some point.
All of this happened in the last like 12 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, they're. It looks like they're watching it over there on the politics server in that live watch room.
And one more
Fucking
thing.
room's almost full. 86 people in there. 87.
My cousin's in the National Guard. He's deployed to Poland right now, and they're at DEFCON 3. Like they upped it to DEFCON 3.
And what did the applying for independence from the cities actually do? What they're applying from independence to, like,
They're just asking Russia to please leave us alone. Don't hurt us. That's basically what it is. And Russia's like, sure.
Not a chance.
But yeah, all in the last 12 hours. All of this shit has happened.
It's clearly Putin wants to get in.
Yeah.
And he's looking for reasons like valid reasons to get in, but
Well, I mean, under Trump, he didn't need any. He just took Crimea.
yeah.
Like, he just walked in.
The Cray said everything that Putin says is like we're doing X, but he's doing Y. So
right.
When he said like a week ago, he said we're leaving. We're actually retreating our troops.
And then they added 10,000 more.
And then they added 10,000 more. So
yeah.
It's a strange guy. Really strange. Yeah.
Stream was full, so I couldn't watch it anyways. I guess there's a maximum number to watch those streams.
Oh.
Apparently it's less than the number of members can be in a room.
Jeez.
That's why I jumped over and take a look at that stream. He was streaming over there.
I guess you're not. Oh, there we are. Found it.
Yeah, this channel doesn't do streams, sadly.
Why won't it? Try this. Oh, that's so weird. Oh, do I not have like image permissions on this server? That might be it.
Oh, on the after show, there's no image permissions in case we get like I don't want to get porn showing up on my channel.
I get
okay.
That count streams too, sadly.
Where would I go to put this, anyways?
Just
there we
post
go.
a
I'll
link
put
to
it.
it in the text channel called After Show Chat.
Well, there's no images on after show chat. General has images though. I'll be back in a minute.
Oh.
Wherever you post one of the YouTube things, you can actually watch it there.
You got to be level 5 to post things
There.
in general too.
Let's see if I can get to post the
Yeah,
videos there.
I joined
won't let me do it
Warframe
either.
1 month after its initial release.
I think my WoW account's from like a month after it started. I haven't used it in like 4 years, but I remember it's from like a near launch.
I joined WoW right at the end of Classic, just before Burning Crusade.
I did all of Classic before Burning Crusade came out, and then I did Burning Crusade, and then I did the Wolves one, and then I stopped. And then every time I go back on and I go, oh, I'll try and play this again, and then I go, oh, I can't be asked because they've changed everything.
Right.
I did think about going back to the new Classic one, but I can't be asked.
I actually picked up Final Fantasy 14. I quite like it.
I was appreciating the System Shock visual.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love those games and DuxX and the old PC stuff. That was my era.
PC games had a different feel to it then. Like it was weird.
I still
was
remember my local shop where you got PC games in boxes with the manual.
You know how long ago that is?
So long ago now.
Because I've got some of them boxes with manuals here.
I've still got my Day of Tentacles box. I've still got a load of discs for some of the games.
Yeah, and in that box with the manuals is a whack of floppy disks.
I think I've got 3.1 on floppy somewhere. Windows 3.1 on floppy. I think it's like 20 floppies.
I've got Centipede on floppy.
There's just something nice about having a full-size box with the game.
I feel like you actually got something. You know what I mean? It actually
Yeah.
feels like you actually got something.
And the manuals that used to have like the thing on.
And you know the one great thing about a manual is? If you find some fun little trick that you can do that's not mentioned, you got a spot to write it down. Dog's barking at TJumps. TJump just told the dog to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And Simon is alive.
Carlos, what debates do I have coming up? I don't know. I don't check them very often. I just know I have them. I have them listed.
What is it that you don't have?
Carlos asked, what are my debates for this week that I have coming up? I don't know, because I put them in my Google Calendar and I don't ever check again. So I have one on a Wednesday, Biscuit, Dennis, Thursday, Eric Sampson, Friday, Democracy of the Dead, looks like, on Saturday. What do I think about the prophecies of Jesus? I don't think he fulfilled any.
Quote unquote prophecies.
Yeah, I think that, what's his name?
I mean, it's one of those things where if you write something afterwards, you can make it fulfill any fucking prophecy you want.
Yeah.
Well, he fulfilled this Old Testament prophecy. Is the Old Testament older? Like, fucking hell, like, this isn't... It's not rocket science. I swear it's not.
Dying, that on just makes some sense that you might want to make a prophecy, write it down after it happened. At least you get it right.
Go back and pull open a Nostradamus book and just start doing all of that shit. Be like, wow, look, I'm fulfilling all these prophecies. Maybe I should write a book about it.
That's pretty high.
It's very, very quiet.
Yep. Yeah, I guess that'll be it for today. Got nothing to talk about, so.
One of these days, I want to just sit down and chat with you alone.
Yep.
You know, just have a relaxed conversation somewhere.
All right, guys. I'll see you tomorrow for another stream. I'll try to set something up on politics. I'll see if I can get a room on politics. That'll be interesting. All right. See you guys later.
Later.
I was literally coming in to wreck you, TJump. Now you're leaving.
What?
I was coming in to wreck you. Now you're leaving.
Did you want to?
I'll wreck your brute facts.
Did you want to say something?
Huh? No, you go ahead and do what you gotta do.
All right.